My 14-year-old daughter called me terrible because she didn't know the real reason I divorced her father. The night I refused to drive her to his wedding, everything changed. The night my 14-year-old daughter called me terrible, I was barefoot on cold kitchen tile, holding a wooden spoon dripping marinara, while my ex-husband's family filled my phone with shame, and my daughter cried upstairs like I had broken something sacred. What nobody in that house knew yet was that I had spent 5 years protecting the wrong person. It was October 17th, 2025. A Friday. 7:43 at night. Outside, suburban Maryland had gone dark in that quick autumn way where the sky doesn't fade so much as close. Inside, my kitchen smelled like scorched tomato, garlic, and lavender from a plug-in I kept near the stove because my therapist once told me lavender lowers stress. It does not. Joceline's footsteps hammered up the stairs. Fast. Hard. Each one felt like a judgment. Then her bedroom door slammed hard enough to shake the hallway frames. One of them. The beach portrait from Ocean City, the last vacation we ever took as a family, slid crooked on its nail. I stood there staring at that crooked picture while the sauce burned. The smoke detector didn't go off. The sauce just kept darkening at the bottom of the pot, and the smell thickened, and my phone kept buzzing on the counter beside me like it had something urgent to accuse me of. The first text was from Helen, Marcus's mother, a woman who had hugged me at my wedding and once told me I was the daughter she never had. "You are a cold, heartless woman, and my son deserves better than this. He always did." The second text came from Marcus's sister, Pauline. She called me a bitch. Capital B. Like it was a title. The third message came from a number I didn't know. "Shame on you." I turned the phone face down beside the wooden spoon. Upstairs, through the ceiling, I could hear Jocelyn crying. Not dramatic crying. Not angry crying. This was raw. Wet. Broken up. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep you don't even have words for it yet. And I stood in the kitchen listening to my daughter cry because of me. Because of him. Because of the truth I had buried for so long that even I had started treating it like furniture. I should tell you how I got there. Because 20 years is not a number. People say it like it is. 20 years. 2 decades. A long time. But it isn't a number. It's a texture. It's knowing the smell of your husband after he mows the lawn in July. Cut grass. Old Spice. Sweat drying on cotton. It's the exact sound of his key in the front door at 6:15 every evening, so consistent you stop checking the clock. It's knowing which cabinet he'll reach for without looking. Which side of the bed he'll drift to by 3 in the morning. The particular sigh he makes through his nose when he thinks no one can hear him. For years I thought that sigh meant he was content. Later I wasn't so sure. Marcus and I married young. I was 22. He was 25. Everyone said we were rushing. They were right. In the same way people are right when they point out storm clouds during a picnic. Technically helpful. Deeply unwelcome. I wore my mother's wedding dress. It had been stored in cedar for years, and when I put it on, it smelled like wood and the faint trace of Shalimar perfume that had somehow stayed in the satin all that time. Marcus cried during the vows. Actual tears. Doug, his best man, clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Get it together, man." Everybody laughed. And I remember standing there thinking, this is it. This is my life. I have arrived. For a long time, it felt like I had. We bought our house in Ellicott City when I was 26. Colonial revival. Cracked front step. A little too much history. A kitchen that smelled permanently like the previous owner's curry. Marcus hated that smell. He painted every wall. Recalked every window. Spent 3 weekends regrouting the upstairs bathroom. Still, the curry lingered. Eventually, we stopped noticing. That's what long marriages do. They absorb everything. The old smells. The new damage. The compromises. The disappointments. The tiny griefs. It all gets worked into the grain until you stop knowing what was always there and what was added later. Jocelyn was born when I was 28. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She had Marcus's jaw and my mother's eyes. Wide set. Gray-green. Riverstone eyes. She screamed for the first 4 months of her life with such determination it felt personal. Marcus took the 2 a.m. shift. I took 4. Shift. I took 4. We passed each other in the hallway like exhausted co-workers. Sour with spit up. Half awake. Desperate. Sometimes our hands brushed when we handed her back and forth. And somehow that was enough. That tiny touch. A quiet proof that somebody else was there. I came back to that idea years later in therapy. Dr. Amal asked me once what I missed most about being married. Not what I missed about Marcus. What I missed about being married? And I told her the truth. The presence. Not romance. Not sex. Not the performance of partnership. The presence. The sound of another person breathing in the dark. The mattress shifting. A light turning on in another room. The knowledge that if you called out, someone would answer. Marcus stopped answering sometime around year 16. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always happen all at once. It doesn't always arrive like a crash. Sometimes it arrives like water damage. A stain in the ceiling. A softness in the floorboards. Something subtle enough to ignore until the structure underneath has already started to rot. He started working late. Yes, I know. The cliché embarrasses me too. He worked late. Changed his phone password. Started showering the second he got home. He had never done that before. The bathroom would fill with steam and the smell of his Blue Dove soap, but under it there was always something else. Something floral. Something sweet. Something that did not belong to me. I found the messages on a Tuesday. A nothing day. Jocelyn was at school. I was folding laundry. His khakis were warm from the dryer when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up the way I had picked it up 1,000 times before. Casually. Without thinking. Like it belonged to shared territory. The message was from someone saved as V. Just the letter. As if even her name had to stay hidden. Last night was incredible. I can still feel you. 6 words. That was it. I sat on the edge of the bed with his khakis across my lap and read that message until it stopped looking like language. The room smelled like fabric softener. Lavender. A scent I had started buying because he once said he liked it. The afternoon light came through the blinds in pale yellow stripes across the carpet. Everything was quiet. Everything was ordinary. And my marriage was over. Her name was Vanessa Caldwell. 31. 11 years younger than me. 14 years younger than him. I know those numbers shouldn't matter. But they stayed with me anyway. Like coins in the mouth. Metallic. Bitter. Impossible to ignore. She worked at the medical supply company where Marcus was a regional manager. Sales rep. That's what the attorney told me. Because, by then, I wasn't learning things from my husband. I was learning them from legal paperwork. Marcus didn't deny the affair. That was somehow worse. If he had lied, I could have fought with him. If he had denied it, I could have thrown facts at him like plates. But instead, he sat across from me at our kitchen table. The same table where we had eaten, argued, laughed, signed school forms, played Scrabble during snowstorms. And he said, "I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened." As if he had slipped. As if this woman had appeared out of weather. As if betrayal were something that could simply occur. The divorce took 8 months. Jocelyn was 9. We told her together on the couch. She looked back and forth between us with those Riverstone eyes and asked, "But who will I live with?" Not why. Not what happened. Who will I live with? She was 9 years old and already thinking like someone managing a crisis. That broke something in me. We agreed on joint custody. I kept the house. He kept the retirement account. And we agreed. Mostly because I insisted that Jocelyn would not be told why the marriage ended until she was older. I told myself I was protecting her. That was true. But it wasn't the only truth. I was also protecting the version of her father she still believed in. Marcus agreed too quickly. Too easily. And even then I knew why. He didn't want his daughter to know who he really was. I thought the affair would burn out. I did. I carried that hope around like a stupid lucky coin. Affairs are supposed to burn hot and then collapse under the weight of daylight. That's what people say. That's what books say. Dr. Amal never said it exactly like that, but she came close. Relationships that begin in deception, she told me once, clicking her pen 3 times, often struggle to build the foundation they never had. Same idea. More professional packaging. Then 14 months after the divorce was finalized, Jocelyn came home from Marcus's one Sunday with glitter nail polish on her thumbs and said very carefully, "Dad and Vanessa are getting married." She watched my face when she said it. Not openly. But enough. I smiled. I said, "That's nice, sweetheart." Then I waited until she went upstairs, sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet, and cried into a dish towel that smelled like lemon soap. After the divorce, I tried. I really did. The first man was David. High school guidance counselor. Kind eyes. Nervous habit of adjusting his glasses with both hands. We met at a school fundraiser in a gym that smelled like folding chairs and sugar cookies. Someone had donated a seascape painting to the silent auction. The horizon was crooked. The ocean looked frantic. David asked what I thought of it. I said, "It looks like the sea is having a panic attack." He laughed. Whole body laugh. Soft and surprised. We dated 5 months. He brought me books. Used paperbacks that smelled like dust and old glue. He kissed like he was asking permission. Then one night over Thai food, with steam rising between us, and everything smelling like coconut and lemongrass, he said, "I think you're wonderful, but I don't think you're here. I think part of you is still in that house with him." He was right. I didn't argue. He paid the bill. Walked me to my car. That was that. The second man was Brian. Contractor. Broad shoulders. Hands full of sawdust. Smelled like pine and cigarettes. He came to fix the bathroom ceiling after a pipe burst. He had a daughter Jocelyn's age, which at the time felt meaningful. It wasn't. He told me he was divorced. He was not divorced. His wife arrived at my front door one Saturday morning in a cloud of magnolia perfume and rage. I stood there in a bathrobe and bare feet on cold concrete while she called me names I deserved only in the sense that I should have known better by then. Brian's truck pulled away from the curb without stopping. I watched it go and thought, I am a place people leave. After that, there wasn't really a third. Just a blur of app dates with men who all smelled like department store cologne and took me to restaurants with exposed brick and Edison bulbs. I ate salads I didn't want. Laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Then came home alone and listened to my house settle around me. Pipes ticking. Stairs creaking. The refrigerator humming. And every time, I thought the same thing. This is it. This is the rest of my life. Eventually, I stopped trying. Dr. Amal called it protection. I called it surrender. Then came October 17th. That Friday. That sauce. That phone call. I was making marinara from scratch because sometimes chopping garlic and tearing basil can make a life feel deliberate. San Marzano tomatoes. Fresh basil from the pot by the window. Garlic minced by hand because the press had broken months earlier and I still hadn't replaced it. The kitchen smelled like simmering tomato, plaster, dust, and that old curry ghost in the walls. Marcus called a little after 7. "Hey," he said, and I heard it immediately. That slightly brighter tone he used when he wanted something. "Can I ask you a huge favor?" "You can ask." So Vanessa's parents are flying in the morning of the wedding. They land at BW1 at 8:30 and I need to pick them up. Okay. which means I can't pick up Joss that morning. I said nothing. The sauce blorped behind me. He kept talking. I was hoping you could bring her to the venue. It's only 40 minutes from your place. You don't even have to. Absolutely not. Silence. Then, Claire. No? Can you just hear me out? I heard you. It's one drive. It is not one drive. She needs to be there. Then pick her up the day before. She gets out of school at 3:15. He sighed. That old sigh. Still capable of reaching somewhere inside me I hated. I don't want to make the drive twice, he said. I have the rehearsal dinner to set up. There's a lot going on. Why can't Vanessa pick up her own parents? She has a hair appointment at 7. I laughed. One dry, sharp little sound. Her hair. Her hair was apparently the immovable force in this situation. Her hair mattered more than my dignity. More than my sanity. More than the insanity of asking me to deliver my daughter to the wedding of the woman he had cheated on me with. Figure it out, Marcus. Claire, come on. No. Then he said the thing that turned the air hard. This is about you, not Jocelyn. I hung up. The sauce burned. Of course it did. I scraped it into the trash while the spoon screamed against the pot. Then Jocelyn came downstairs. Her face was swollen from crying. Her eyes were red. She was wearing Marcus's old Georgetown sweatshirt, the one she had stolen years ago and never given back. It hung off her shoulders. She stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at me with something worse than anger. Contempt. You're terrible, she said. Her voice cracked. You don't want me to see my dad. You just hate him, and you're taking it out on me. Jocelyn, that is not what this is. Then what is it? She stepped forward. It's 40 minutes. Why can't you just drive me? Because the woman he's marrying is the reason I eat dinner alone. Because I would have to see the flowers, the chairs, the smiling relatives, the parking lot full of people celebrating the destruction of my marriage like it was fate. Because I would have to hand my daughter over with a calm face while every cell in my body remembered what he did. Because some humiliations do not become easier just because time passes. Because I could survive a lot. But I could not survive that. Not gracefully. Not in front of her. But I couldn't say any of that. Not without tearing open the truth I had kept sealed for 5 years. I have my reasons, I said. What reasons? I looked at her. 14. Riverstone eyes. Marcus's jaw. My own stubborn silence reflected back at me. I can't explain right now, baby. She made this furious, wounded sound in the back of her throat. Then she ran upstairs. Door slam. Frames shaking. Silence. The texts from Marcus's family kept coming after that. His mother? His sister? The unknown number? Each message felt like someone tapping a bruise just to confirm it still hurt. By 9 o'clock, the house was quiet. Jocelyn hadn't come down for dinner. I made a second pot of sauce. This one tasted like nothing. I ate alone at the kitchen table with her music vibrating faintly through the ceiling. Then I put on my coat. I didn't exactly decide to leave. I just found myself doing it. Gray wool coat. Shoes from the mat. Keys from the hook. Outside, the air smelled like wet leaves and chimney smoke. I got in my car and drove. The bar was called The Pint and Quill. A name trying too hard. Strip mall on Route 40. Between a nail salon and a tax preparer. I had passed it 100 times and never gone inside. The door was heavier than I expected. When I opened it, warm air rolled over me carrying hops, old wood, fried food, and citrus cleaner. Everything inside was lit amber. Fleetwood Mac was playing. A television over the bar showed a football game no one was watching. I sat down. The bartender was young, with a septum ring and botanical tattoos climbing both forearms. She put a napkin in front of me and said, "What can I get you?" "Bourbon," I said. I do not drink bourbon. But that night, it felt right to choose something that tasted like a mistake. It came in a short glass. I took one sip. Campfire. Cough syrup. Gret. That's when I noticed the man 3 stools down. Not because he was flashy. Because he wasn't. He had dark hair cut short enough to show gray at the temples. A green and black flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Forearms that looked strong because they worked, not because they lifted weights. And on his left ring finger, there was a pale line where a band had recently been. He caught me looking. I said, "Sorry." "For what?" Staring. He glanced down at his hand. "Took it off 6 weeks ago. Skin hasn't caught up." Mine took about 4 months. That made him look at me. Really look. "How long?" he asked. "Married? 20 years? Divorced? 5. He let out a low whistle. 12 years married, he said. Separated 3 months. "Kids? A son? Liam? 10. He paused. "She left, not the other way." I nodded. For a minute, we just sat there. 2 strangers with matching ring marks and different versions of the same damage. Fleetwood Mac shifted into landslide. I took another sip. He said, "You look like somebody who didn't come here for the ambiance." I laughed. "No." "Then because maybe bourbon loosens more than your throat," I told him. "Not all of it. Just enough." "My daughter called me terrible tonight," I said. "My ex wants me to drive her to his wedding, to the woman he cheated with. Apparently, her hair appointment prevents her from picking up her own parents." He stared at me for half a second. Then he said, "That is one of the worst things I've ever heard." "Thank you." "What did you say?" I said no. "And now you're the villain." "Exactly." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "What does bourbon taste like to you?" he asked. "Like a campfire somebody put out with cough syrup." That made him laugh. Not loudly, but genuinely. And it changed his face. His name was Garrett Hollis. Finnish carpenter. Built-ins, cabinetry, restoration work on old houses. He said it plainly, like it was just a fact and not an identity he performed. He smelled faintly of bar soap and wood shavings. When he talked, his voice stayed low. Measured. Careful. We talked for 2 hours. Mostly about the logistics of endings. Custody schedules. Lawyers. Dividing up furniture that once meant home and now meant paperwork. He told me about the Craftsman bungalow in Catonsville he had restored by hand over 6 years, and how on closing day, he walked through the empty rooms and ran his hand along the trim, and felt like he was attending his own funeral. I told him about the curry ghost in my kitchen. He said all old houses have ghosts. Then added, sometimes you become one of them. We talked about his ex-wife leaving for a yoga instructor named Kevin. "He has a man bun," Garrett said, with a level of contained disgust that was honestly impressive. "My son calls him Mom's friend Kevin." I laughed into my bourbon. "Every time Liam says that," he said, "I consider punching drywall." "You do not seem like a man who punches drywall." "I'm not," he said. "I'm a man who imagines it in detail." The bar emptied around us. The bartender wiped down taps. The football game ended. And then Garrett said, "Can I tell you something insane?" "Please." "My mother told me last week I should get remarried immediately." I stared at him. "What?" She said, "Garrett, the best way to get over a woman is to get under a legal obligation to another one." I laughed so hard bourbon went the wrong way. He waited. Then he said, "The stupid part is, she's not entirely wrong." Something in his tone changed. I heard it. He looked down at his glass. "My ex's lawyer is pushing for support at a rate that would basically mean I work to fund her new life with Kevin." "That can't be real." "It is. My lawyer says if I were remarried, the numbers change. Shared household, adjusted living expenses, doesn't erase it. But it matters." He said it like a confession and a joke and a practical memo all at once. "I'm not suggesting anything," he added. "Okay? I'm just telling you a legal fact." "A legal fact?" "Yes." Silence. Then I heard myself say, If a person were hypothetically considering something that ridiculous, what would the rules be? He looked at me carefully. No expectations, he said. Paper arrangement, separate rooms, separate routines, shared address. Long enough to get through the hearing, maybe a year, then a clean dissolution. I should have laughed. Instead, I just sat there, holding my glass, looking at this tired, careful man with a pale ring mark and the strangest idea I had ever heard. When we got up to leave, he slid a cocktail napkin toward me. His number was on it. No pressure, he said. You can throw that away in the parking lot if you want. I folded it and put it in my coat pocket. When I got home, the house was dark except for the over-the-stove light. Joceline's music had stopped. I stood in the entryway, listening to the old house breathe around me. Then I looked up the stairs at the crooked Ocean City portrait. Still crooked. Still there. I didn't fix it. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, turning the whole insane conversation over in my mind. Paper marriage. Separate rooms. A year. Clean exit. Absurd. Completely absurd. At 3 a.m, I was angry at myself for thinking about it. At 4, I was hearing Marcus say, "This is about you, not Joceline." At 5, I was wondering whether being reasonable for years had gotten me anything except exhausted. The next morning, Joceline came downstairs, puffy-eyed and silent. She poured cereal. I poured coffee. The silence between us felt packed with glass. Finally I said, "Do you want pancakes?" "No." "Toast?" "No." Then she said, without looking at me, "I just don't get why everything has to be so hard with you two." With you two. Like my pain and his convenience were equal forces. "There are things you don't know," I said. "Then tell me." I opened my mouth. Closed it. Because the truth was heavy and sharp, and once spoken, it would belong to her too. "Not yet," I said. She stood up so fast, the chair legs screeched against the floor. "Then don't expect me to understand." She left for a friend's house an hour later. After she was gone, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I opened it. "This is Garrett. Hope that's okay. Just checking you made it home safe." I stared at the message longer than necessary. Then I typed back, "I did. Thanks." A second later, another text came in. "For the record, I woke up and still think the whole idea sounds insane." I smiled despite myself. "Good," I wrote back. "That means at least one of us is sane." He answered, "Let's not get carried away." Then I sent the message that changed everything. "Are you serious about it?" There was a pause. Then, "Yes." Another pause. Then, "Coffee if you want to talk in daylight. Public place. No bourbon." We met at a diner in Cottonsville the next day. Bright booths. Burnt coffee. Bacon living forever in the curtains. He had brought legal pads. Actual legal pads. "You came prepared," I said. "I'm a carpenter," he said. "Preparation is just anxiety with a plan." He laid everything out clearly. He was not looking for romance. Not looking for a replacement wife. Not looking to build some fake emotional life. He needed a legal household on paper. That was the truth. "And what do I get?" I asked. He didn't dodge. "If I'm honest, not much. Some rent help, free repairs, and a story nobody will believe later." I laughed. Then he added, "Maybe also the chance to do one strange thing for yourself instead of one more reasonable thing for everyone else." That line stayed with me. I took the whole situation to therapy. Of course I did. Dr. Amal listened without interrupting, then clicked her pen 3 times. "Do you want to marry this man?" she asked. "No." "Do you want to help him?" "I don't know him." "Do you want to punish Marcus?" I looked away. "Part of me probably does." She nodded. "Do you want to stop organizing your entire life around what other people can comfortably tolerate from you?" That one landed hard. 3 days later, Marcus showed up on my porch. unannounced. He was wearing one of those quarter zips he liked, the kind that made him look polished and respectable from a distance. "You're really doing this?" he asked. "Doing what?" "Making Jocelyn pay because you can't be civil for one morning." "Get off my porch, Marcus." "She is upset." "I know. She thinks you don't want her there." I let out a tired laugh. "You know how important this day is," he said. "For who?" I asked. "You? Vanessa? Her hair?" He flinched. "Good." Then he said, "You need to move on, Claire." That was the moment. Not the bar, not the bourbon, not the legal pad. That. You need to move on. As if my pain had become messy clutter. As if his betrayal was something I had failed to clean up fast enough for everybody else's comfort. That night I texted Garrett. "If the offer is still on the table, I want to hear the rules again." He wrote back almost immediately. "Tomorrow? 7. The pint and quill." He had typed the rules this time. 1 page, double-spaced, separate bedrooms, separate finances, shared address, honesty about practical matters. Either party could end it with notice after the hearing. And one line that mattered more than I expected. No harmful lying to the children. I looked up. He said, "I won't drag Liam through nonsense. I won't ask you to hurt Jocelyn with a lie that lasts too long." That mattered. At closing time he asked, "Do you want more time?" And this is the strangest part. I didn't. I had spent 5 years being careful, measured, reasonable, contained, and I was tired of caution. "No," I said. He nodded once. "Courthouse has an opening Thursday." In less than 2 weeks, my life had gone from scorched sauce to courthouse vows. We got married 11 days after meeting. Cold morning. Cloud cover. Courthouse hallway smelling like coffee, floor polish, and paper. I wore a navy sweater dress and boots. He wore a charcoal button-down and a tie that annoyed him. "Your tie is crooked," I said. "So is this plan." Arlene came as my witness. Garrett brought his lawyer's paralegal, a woman named Sonia, with sharp eyeliner and the expression of someone who had seen too much human nonsense to be impressed by any of it. The judge asked if we understood the legal contract we were entering. We both said yes. My voice shook. Not because I thought I was making a romantic mistake. Because even ridiculous choices become heavy once they turn real. We signed. There was a brief, polite kiss because the room expected one. Then it was done. We were married. Afterward, we went to a diner because that felt like what 2 accidental newlyweds should do. I had apple pie. He had cherry. He looked at his plate and said, "My mother is going to think I'm a genius." I said, "My therapist is going to bill me extra." Then came the hard part. The children. Liam took it better than anyone had a right to expect. Garrett later told me his son had stared at him for 10 full seconds and then asked, "Are you in love, or are you being weird?" Which, frankly, was fair. Garrett told him the gentlest version of the truth. That I was a friend. That adults sometimes help each other in complicated ways. Liam thought about it and asked, "Can she make grilled cheese?" Practical child. I liked him immediately. Jocelyn did not take it well. I told her in the living room while she was doing algebra. "I got married," I said. She blinked, then said, "What?" "To a man named Garrett." "How long have you known him?" "Not even 2 weeks." She laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "You married a stranger?" "He isn't a stranger." "He is to me." Then came the question I should have known was coming. "Is this because of Dad?" "No." "Then what is it because of?" I gave the worst possible answer. "It's complicated." She shoved back from the coffee table and said, "Everything with you is complicated." Then she went upstairs. Again. Another door closed hard enough to shake the frame. Garrett moved into the spare room over the garage the next weekend. 2 duffel bags, a toolbox, 1 box of clothes, a coffee maker nicer than anything I owned. That's all? I asked. That's all I kept, he said. There's a difference. The first week was awkward in all the expected ways. His shoes by the door, his mug in the drying rack, his toothbrush in the upstairs bathroom, the strange intimacy of another adult's routines moving quietly through your space. He got up earlier than I did, made coffee strong enough to wake the dead, never commented on the house, though there was plenty to comment on. Cracked step, sticking pantry door, squealing faucet, loose towel bar. On his second morning there, I came downstairs and the pantry door suddenly worked. Did you fix that? I asked. It was bothering me, he said. It's been bothering me since 2018. He shrugged. Yeah, it had a hinge issue. That was Garrett. No speech where a screwdriver would do. Jocelyn ignored him with real dedication at first. If he said good morning, she said nothing. If he was in the kitchen, she took breakfast upstairs. But Liam was impossible to ignore. He was all elbows and questions and running commentary. Within 2 visits, he had found the best snacks, the loose fence board in the yard, and the exact shelf where I kept the good crackers. He and Jocelyn circled each other warily, then bonded over making fun of one of the teachers at their tutoring center. By the time Marcus was finalizing seating charts, I was already married. He called as soon as he found out. Not because I told him, because Jocelyn did. You got married? He said the second I answered. Yes. To who? A man named Garrett. There was a disbelieving laugh on the other end. This is insane. Maybe? You let some random man move in with my daughter? She's my daughter too. Silence. Then, this is vindictive. There it was. The assumption that every choice I made still somehow revolved around him. No, I said. This is me no longer arranging my life around your comfort. He hung up. His wedding happened anyway. I did not drive Jocelyn there. He figured it out. Vanessa's cousin picked her up. Jocelyn was still angry with me, but she still wanted her father to choose her. So she went. She wore a pale blue dress and looked beautiful and miserable. After the car pulled away, I stood in the driveway with my arms folded against the cold. A minute later, Garrett came out with 2 mugs. He handed one to me. Tea, chamomile. I looked at him. You guessed right. You looked like somebody who didn't need caffeine. We stood there without talking. The street was quiet. Leaves moved along the curb. Finally I said, "Thank you for not saying anything encouraging." He nodded. I figured if you wanted encouragement, you'd have hired a motivational speaker instead of a carpenter. I laughed. The wedding passed. Then winter came. And the house started changing. Not dramatically. Quietly. Practically. Like heat returning to old pipes. Garrett replaced the cracked front step before the first ice. Tightened the banister. Fixed the squealing faucet. Built Liam a bookshelf for the spare room. Then built one for Jocelyn too, because, in his words, symmetry matters. She pretended not to care. Then spent an entire Saturday arranging her books on it by color. One night in December, the power went out during wet snow. The whole neighborhood went black. Jocelyn came downstairs, pretending not to be scared. Liam thought it was the greatest thing that had ever happened. Garrett found candles. I found blankets. We sat in the living room lit by flashlight glow and candlelight, while the wind pushed at the windows. Garrett made grilled cheese on the gas stove. Slightly burnt. Perfect. Liam made shadow animals. Jocelyn corrected his rabbit until it actually looked like a rabbit. And sitting there in that dim room, I had a thought so quiet it nearly slipped past me. This feels like a family. That frightened me enough that I pulled back after that. Not obviously. Just enough. Less lingering in the kitchen at night. Less easy conversation. More disappearing upstairs. Garrett noticed. One night he asked, "Did I cross a line?" No? Then what changed? I looked at him across the kitchen, the dishwasher humming, the house warm around us, and I said the truest thing I had. You started to feel less temporary. He held my gaze, then said very softly, yeah. And somehow that was enough. In January, Marcus missed Jocelyn's winter chorus concert. He had promised to come. She kept looking at the door every time it opened. He never showed. 10 minutes before the concert started, he texted, "Stuck in traffic. So sorry. I'll make the next one." There is no next one when you're 14 and scanning a room full of parents for your father. Afterward, she got in my car and closed the door very carefully. That carefulness scared me more than tears. "Did he even leave work?" she asked. "I don't know." She looked out the window and said, "Vanessa posted a steakhouse picture 40 minutes ago." That was the beginning. Once a child notices the pattern, she starts seeing it everywhere. The delayed pickups, the distracted calls, the constant rearranging around adult convenience. A week later, the truth came out. Not because I planned it, because I finally ran out of ways to protect the wrong person. Jocelyn came home from Marcus's furious. She dropped her bag by the stairs and said, "Grandma Helen said you made the divorce ugly because you were bitter." Something cold moved through me. What exactly did she say? She said Dad tried to keep things peaceful, and you couldn't let go. Garrett was in the hall replacing a light fixture. He stopped moving, but didn't turn around. I took a breath. Then another. "Come sit down," I said. She didn't want to. But she sat. I sat across from her with my hands flat on my knees because they were shaking. "There is a reason your father and I divorced," I said. "A real reason, and I kept it from you because I thought I was protecting you." She stared at me. Protecting me from what? I looked at my daughter. At how old she already was. At how much of childhood had already been taken from her by other people's choices. Then I said it. "Your father was in a relationship with Vanessa while he was still married to me." The room went still. Completely still. "No?" she said automatically. Then again, smaller. "No? He cheated on me," I said. Simple words. No poison. Just truth. He was with her before our marriage ended. She stood so fast the chair nearly tipped over. "You're lying." "I'm not." "You're just saying that because..." "Because what?" I asked, and my voice cracked. "Because after 5 years of swallowing this, I suddenly invented a story?" Tears rose in her eyes. She looked at Garrett then. Like maybe he could stop the room from changing. He set down the screwdriver and said only, "Your mom is telling you the truth." She made a sound I will never forget. Not a scream, not a sob. Something deeper than that. Then she ran upstairs and locked her door. I sat there shaking. Garrett came into the room slowly. "You okay?" "No?" He nodded. Then said, "I'll keep Liam downstairs." Such a small sentence. Such mercy in it. When I finally went upstairs, I found Jocelyn on the floor beside her bed, holding the Ocean City picture frame in her lap. She had taken it off the wall. "Was everyone lying to me?" she asked. Not accusing. Just shattered. "Not everyone," I said. "But enough." Then she cried. Quietly. Steadily. The kind of crying that empties a person out. I sat on the floor with her. For a while we just sat there. Then she leaned into me the way she used to when she was little. "I'm sorry I called you terrible," she whispered. That broke me more than anything else. Not Marcus. Not Vanessa. Not Helen's texts. That. I kissed the top of her head. "You were a child," I said. "You never owed me perfect understanding." She pulled back and asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought if you knew, it would break something between you and your dad that could never be repaired." She thought about that for a long time. Then said, with devastating calm, "Maybe it should break something." After that, everything shifted. Jocelyn didn't stop seeing Marcus immediately, but she became different with him. More watchful. Less eager. She asked sharper questions. He hated that. Of course he did. He called me twice to accuse me of turning her against him. I told him, no, truth did that. Helen texted once more. A long paragraph about loyalty and forgiveness and how children should never be burdened with adult ugliness. I blocked her. Then Pauline. And the silence that followed felt cleaner than I expected. Around the same time, Garrett's hearing arrived. He wore a dark suit that didn't fit perfectly and looked uncomfortable in every possible way. I went with him because appearing together mattered legally. The courthouse smelled like toner and bad coffee and old tension. He kept flexing his left hand. Nervous? I asked. No, he said. Then, after a beat, yes. What part? He looked at me. The part where my life depends on a sentence that starts with my wife and I. That did something to me. Not because it was romantic, because it was trusting. Because somewhere along the way, this arrangement had become real enough to carry weight. The hearing reduced his support obligation. Not erased, reduced. Enough. When we walked back out into the cold sunlight, he exhaled like he had been holding his breath for months. Then he turned to me and said, "You saved me." I shook my head. No, the law saved you. He looked at me steadily. Claire, you saved me. I didn't know what to do with that kind of gratitude. That night, he brought home Thai food. The smell hit me the second he opened the containers. Coconut, lemongrass, memory. He saw my face change. I can get something else, he said immediately. No, it's okay. History attached? Yeah? He nodded once. Then said, so simply I almost missed the tenderness in it, okay, we can make new history. And we did. Quietly. Over time. Liam started calling my house home base. Jocelyn stopped taking her cereal upstairs. One Saturday, I came back from the grocery store and found all three of them in the backyard, arguing over how to build a raised garden bed. Liam wanted a hexagon because hexagons are advanced. Jocelyn told him he didn't know what advanced meant. Garrett was kneeling in the grass with a measuring tape, listening to both of them like it mattered deeply. He looked up when I came through the gate. Any strong opinions on geometry? He asked. And I stood there with 2 grocery bags in my hands, looking at that ridiculous scene under a pale spring sky, and felt something warm and terrifying inside me. Spring softened everything. The yard greened up. The windows stayed open longer. The house smelled less like old heat and more like damp earth and dinners that didn't burn. Marcus and Vanessa's marriage, from what little community gossip drifted my way, was already fraying. Not spectacularly, just normally, which somehow felt more appropriate. I took almost no pleasure in it. My life had finally become something other than a reaction to his. One night in May, Garrett and I sat on the back steps after the kids had gone to bed. He had a beer. I had tea. There was a train somewhere in the distance. The air smelled like cut grass. Our year is up in 5 months, he said, Ma. There it was. The thing we had been carefully not saying. I stared into my mug. Do you want to end it? He took his time. I want to do whatever hurts the kids least. That answer was so painfully him. What about what hurts you least? I asked. He looked out into the yard. That has never been my best category. Silence settled between us. Then he said, Can I tell you something? Yes. The first night at the bar, I didn't really mean to bring it up. Not fully. You just looked like someone standing in the exact same fire. I turned toward him. And I thought, he continued, if anybody would understand why survival makes people make strange deals, it might be you. I did understand, I said. Yeah, he said. That's what scared me. The first real kiss happened 2 weeks later in the kitchen. Not in a storm. Not after a grand confession. The dishwasher was running. I reached into the cabinet over his shoulder for a mug, while he tightened a shelf bracket. He turned at the same time. We were suddenly too close. The room seemed to change temperature. "If I do this," he said softly, "it can't be part of the arrangement." "It wouldn't be," I said. Then I kissed him. Or he kissed me. At that point, I don't think the distinction matters. It was warm. Hesitant for exactly 1 second. Then real, deeply real. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine and said, "Well, that complicated things." "Yes," I whispered. It did. But this time, complicated didn't mean damaged. It meant alive. After that, we were honest. That was the rule. With ourselves. With each other. With the children. As much as was fair. Liam rolled his eyes and said, "I knew it." Jocelyn just looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled. Small. Tired. Wise in the way children get when life has asked too much of them. "Good," she said. And that one word felt like forgiveness. Summer moved through the house gently after that. Open windows. Longer dinners. A steadier kind of quiet. By autumn, the year had almost closed. The Ocean City portrait had been rehung straight. Beside it now was a newer photo. Jocelyn and Liam on the porch steps in gardening gloves, both pretending to hate the camera, while Garrett stood behind them making bunny ears. The anniversary of that terrible October night came quietly. No explosion, no texts, no slammed doors, just another Friday. I made marinara again on purpose. The kitchen filled with tomato, garlic, and basil. No burning, no panic, just dinner. Garrett came in through the back door, smelling like sawdust and cool air. Jocelyn sat at the counter doing homework and arguing with me about whether semicolons were basically punctuation for people who want attention. At one point, Garrett reached past me for the salt, and his hand touched the small of my back in that absent, familiar way people do when care has stopped being performance and become reflex. And I had to stop for a second. Because that was the thing I had missed most all along. Not romance. Not rescue. Not even love in the dramatic sense people always mean it. Presence. The sound of another person in the next room. A hand at your back. A kitchen that feels inhabited instead of managed. A life that is no longer arranged around surviving what someone else did to you. That night, after dinner, after Jocelyn went upstairs, and Garrett loaded the dishwasher because he always loaded it wrong, but with such confidence I had stopped correcting him, I stood alone for a moment in the kitchen. Same room. Same tile. Same season. But not the same life. The beach picture was straight. The sauce hadn't burned. My phone was quiet. And upstairs, my daughter was not crying because she thought I was cruel. She knew the truth now. Not all of it. No child ever gets all of it. But enough. Enough to know I had not failed her by hurting. Enough to know silence is not the same thing as peace. Enough to know love without honesty rots from the inside. Garrett came back into the kitchen, dried his hands on a dish towel, and said, "You okay?" And just like that, I understood something I should have known years earlier. Healing is not the moment the wound disappears. It's the moment you stop organizing your whole life around it. I looked at him. At the man I married for reasons that had nothing to do with love. At the man who had fixed my pantry door, made grilled cheese in a blackout, stood still when the truth shattered my daughter, and never once asked me to be smaller than what I had survived. And I smiled. "Yeah," I said. This time, I really was.